Bonjour. Je voudrais commencer par féliciter l'association des anciens élèves, en particulier Annie et Rebecca. C'est un honneur pour moi d'être ici en tant qu'ancienne élève. À Prague, au XVIe siècle, le ghetto est attaqué. Les rabbis créent le golem, un homme artificiel, pour défendre le ghetto. Malheureusement, la machine échappe à leur contrôle et devient violente. Et donc, ils doivent la tuer. Le golem est tué en effaçant la première lettre qu'il avait écrite sur le front, en changeant Emet, qui voulait dire la vérité, en Met, qui veut dire mort. Il avait un bouton d'arrêt. Nous sommes devant un changement de paradigme et nous sentons que le contrôle nous échappe. Le golem est bien sûr un archétype et c'est une peur que nous avons depuis des siècles. Nous voudrions avoir un bouton d'arrêt pour le progrès, mais il ne va pas s'arrêter. Hier, le président de la République observait que l'irrationalité alimente la peur. Manuel Veloso plaidait justement pour la liberté illimitée de recherche, faisant la claire distinction entre ce qui est possible dans le laboratoire et ce qui est effectivement transporté et incorporé dans la société. Aujourd'hui, nous allons discuter des façons dont l'intelligence artificielle pourrait justement affecter notre société. Comment c'est déjà affecté et ira l'affecter dans le futur. Nous allons voir comment gérer ces conséquences en ce qui concerne leur impact dans le travail, dans la santé et dans l'éducation aussi. Non pas à partir d'une position de peur, mais à la recherche des opportunités. Donc, à propos de ça, je vais commencer par inviter professeur Arlindo Oliveira, et je passe en português. Professor Arlindo Oliveira, pode sentar ali no banquinho. Obrigada. É presidente do Instituto Superior Técnico, portanto é o meu chefe supremo. Professor no Departamento de Ciências Computacionais e Engenharias do Instituto. É doutorado em Berkeley, em 1994. As suas principais áreas de interesse são algoritmos e complexidade, machine learning e bioinformática. Trabalhou no CERN, nos laboratórios Cadence e no Inst. É membro da Academia de Engenharia e é uma das vozes mais prestigiadas em Portugal nesta área, colaborando frequentemente com a imprensa, de certeza que já ouviram. Professor Arlindo. Sim, sim. Pode ser. Eu vou me sentar.
Olá, bom dia a todos. English, right? English. Hello, good morning. Choose. English. English is one of the common language, so let's do it in English. So, good morning, everyone. So, I was asked to give you a brief idea of how I view artificial intelligence and what are the risks, but also the promises that artificial intelligence can bring to us and to humanity in general. You have heard a lot about artificial intelligence these days, and sometimes we may lose the sense of what it means. Sometimes we describe by artificial intelligence things that have nothing to do with artificial intelligence. For instance, blockchain, which is a technology that enables the establishment of contracts without a central authority, has nothing to do with artificial intelligence, although it will enable us to do things that require intelligence. But artificial intelligence is not everything that has to do with computers. It's a more restricted idea of making computers behave intelligently like people do. This is very difficult to actually understand exactly what it is, because we don't know exactly how people work. We don't know exactly how we work. So it's very hard to make computers behave as we behave, because we don't understand exactly how we behave, how humans behave. But I'll give you an idea that AI means mostly three things these days. So the first thing is data analysis. It is applying intelligence to analyzing data, and from this data extracting new information. This is what Facebook does when it looks at the posts that you or other people do in Facebook, and from that Facebook understands the interests of people and can use that to do direct marketing, can use that to sell a lot of information. This is what Google does, right? Google, from your searches and from the mail you have in your inbox, Google looks into this and understands what you want and uses this mostly for marketing. But it's not only for marketing. It can be used in many other things, right? And when we talk about big data, when we talk about the power of using data to create value, we are talking mostly about this. This is also called analytics, and this is something that it does not replace human labor, because this is something that a human will not do in principle. A human will not go through 1 million mails in the inbox of Google, and from that 1 million mails understand what the people there like or don't like. This is something that is an automated analysis of data, and from that extracting information. And this has a few risks, but probably the most serious risk is the risk to privacy. Because when you put your data in whatever system, and you don't need to put it in Google, you don't need to put it on Facebook, just the fact that you are carrying with you a mobile phone, probably the owner of the operating system knows where you have been and can trace every single step you gave from every day since you had that phone. And this information is very, very useful, but you can view it as a threat to privacy, because what is there to stop these companies from telling someone else things about you that you don't want to be known, right? Where you have been today, what mails you read, which sites on the web you visit, which series you view on your computer. All of this is recorded somewhere, and all of this can be used for good, but sometimes also for not so good applications. And so data analysis by itself is mostly good, creates economic value, but certainly poses a very big threat to privacy, and in some ways also a big threat to other values like democracy, because by using very directed marketing, you can influence critical sectors of the population and make them vote and change their vote, and this will undermine the idea of democracy, that everybody, because if you do very directed marketing, you can, just by putting a few millions of dollars, change an election, like apparently happened in the United States, like apparently may have happened in the UK with the Brexit. Okay, but other than that, and that is big. Other than that, it's not a major issue. The second area of AI, remember this was the first one. The second area of AI is the idea that you can use these techniques. What have I thought? 5 minutes? Something like that? Okay. The other second area is the idea that you can use intelligence systems to replace human functions, to replace human jobs. And here there are a number of things that can be done, because there are many jobs that humans do that they do not require such a huge amount of skills. For instance, driving a car. Driving a car is not a very complicated thing. Driving a car, you look, it's like you have a camera facing forward, which in this case is 2 cameras, you have 2 eyes, and from that you have to generate just 2 values: the pressure on the pedal, negative or positive if it's the accelerator, and the angle on the steering wheel. That's all it takes to drive. So a computer could, in principle, drive very easily. He has a camera facing forward, and it generates the control of the pedals and the control of the steering wheel. Of course, it's much more complicated than this, but now we are starting to have systems that can do this. But they can also do many other things. A system like this can be in a call center and answer calls from people, can do telemarketing calls, can probably do personalized teaching, so every one of you can have a tutor that tells you what to learn and correct your essays, grade your essays, and choose the things that you should read, and so on. So it can certainly replace many medical doctors, especially in the diagnosis field, and probably not so far in the future you'll have surgeons that are basically AI systems maneuvering surgeon robots. And this is important. It's positive also. Why? Because when you automate these jobs, you are creating economic value, because you are basically doing the same thing as before, but spending less money, So you are increasing the efficiency of the company, of the system, and with that you are actually creating economic value. But you can probably see right from the start that there will also be some challenges here, some threats. Why? Because as systems like these replace more and more jobs, it's unclear that there will be enough jobs left for everyone to have. This is not a new worry. This worry happened before. In particular, in the first industrial revolution, there was a big worry that the steam engine first and then the automated machines will replace humans in the jobs and will leave everyone without a job. That did not happen. New jobs were created. Many of the jobs that exist today did not exist before the first industrial revolution, and many people do believe that every new technological transformation will create more jobs than the ones that will be destroyed. We don't know whether that's true or not. It's unclear, especially because the new jobs that will be created are most likely require skills that the people that have their jobs removed, that see the jobs disappear, probably will not have the right skills for the time after the next industrial revolution. That usually is called the fourth industrial revolution. The first and second industrial revolution took a long time, took about 100 years to take place. And now we will not have a century. We will not have 100 years for society to adapt. We'll probably have just a couple of decades or even less. So it's unclear to me that the new job, that there will be people well positioned for the new jobs. I'm quite sure you will be, but don't forget there are many people now that are in the 30s, in the 40s, in the 50s that may lose their jobs and will not have the right skills for the new jobs that will be created by this fourth industrial revolution, by the revolution that includes artificial intelligence, but also many other things, Internet of Things, biosensors, probably blockchain, and the number of technologies, all mobile technologies, 5th generation communications, and so on. So this is the second area of AI, and is an area that raises some questions that maybe we have the opportunity to discuss later. And the third area, which right now has no economic value at all, except as a research issue, is the idea of strong artificial intelligence. What is strong artificial intelligence? Is the idea that we may be able to develop methods, algorithms, systems that will be as flexible as humans in learning and doing things. Remember that today this does not exist. No system today is as flexible as a human being. You may have systems that are the best at doing diagnosis, like looking at medical images. You may even have systems that are better drivers than humans, and you may have systems that can do some specific things like calling to make a reservation. I don't know if you heard Google Duplex, making reservations on the phone, and they are indistinguishable from the real persons for all purposes, but they are very specific purpose systems. They do not have the generality of human intelligence. In fact, we are very far from being able to create any system that is as general as the human mind, as general as the human brain. We don't even know how to do it, and maybe we'll never be able to do it. Maybe 500 years from now, people will still be trying to do that and will not be able. And some people believe that we'll never understand well enough how the human brain works to reproduce its behavior in a computer. I don't believe in that. I believe that in the next decades, sooner or later, certainly during this century, and most of you, the young kids, will certainly live to see the 22nd century. So still in your lifetimes, we'll see systems that are either as flexible as the human brain or possibly as flexible and more knowledgeable because they have access to more data. They can look at more data at the same time. For instance, an artificial intelligence surgeon can perform a surgery, but at the same time be looking at 3 or 4 images at the same time, maybe a resonance and a TAC and whatever extra data, something that a human surgeon cannot do. So these systems do not have the same limitations as humans, and in the end they may be very, very flexible. And this raises the most interesting questions, which is what will be the future of humanity? Will we live with these systems and there will be sort of 2 intelligent species on Earth? Or will these systems get tired of humans and, I don't know, start a war? So it's always an interesting idea. I don't worry too much about this idea, but it's always an idea. Or will they be our slaves? Will they be? We will treat them as slaves, systems that are intelligent but have to do as we bid, and we treat them as slaves as we used to treat slaves 200 years ago. So those are interesting questions. I don't have an answer for them. I just have the questions, but I'll be glad to discuss these topics. All of this together, but in particular this third approach, leads, of course, to the questions like the singularity or the question of superintelligence. So will we ever develop a system that will be so intelligent that is much more intelligent than humans, and therefore we should give it control of politics, of Earth, of industrial development, of science, and so on? This is the idea that maybe 100 years from now, maybe 200 years from now, we'll have a system that will be so much better than humans doing these things that there is no point in humans doing research. Strange idea, but still one that is interesting to discuss. And the other idea is the singularity, the idea that sometime in the future, these systems will be so different, the society will be so different that there will be a sudden and rapid change in the way society is structured. So that could happen if humans stopped being the most intelligent species on Earth and started being the second most intelligent species on Earth. And as the chimpanzees and gorillas know, being the second most intelligent species on Earth is not very interesting. Usually it's actually very, very boring. So we like to be the dominant species in that respect. And so these people that believe in the singularity believe at that time there will be a sudden and rapid change in society, which is usually termed the technological singularity. Those are all ideas for discussion. None of this, of course, is written in stone. All depends on our choices. All depends on what we decide to do with the technology, on what we decide to do with the politics of this, how we define our future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is em português. Peter Villax, ancien élève, é licenciado em Economia e Política pela Universidade de Aberdeen. Começou a sua carreira profissional como programador informático e ao longo de 35 anos na Hovione trabalhou nas várias empresas do grupo em desenvolvimento de produtos. É autor de patentes de invenção e artigos científicos na área dos inaladores pulmonares. Presentemente investe em startups na área do dispositivo médico e saúde digital. The floor is yours.
Bonjour à tous. J'ai décidé de faire cette présentation en français et je commence par vous donner un conseil qui est très très important, surtout pour les Portugais et pour ceux qui ne sont pas de langue française maternelle. Vous avez appris à parler français et quand vous commencerez à travailler, peut-être vous travaillerez en portugais ou en anglais. N'oubliez jamais cette langue merveilleuse. Faites un effort pour la maintenir. Vous en serez très, très fiers. Voilà. Alors, je vais parler sur les peurs que peuvent inspirer l'intelligence artificielle dans le domaine de la santé. C'est effectivement un sujet qui est extrêmement sensible et je vais essayer de réduire vos peurs en ce qui concerne la santé et l'intelligence artificielle. Alors, je n'ai jamais fait cette présentation en français. Des fois, je pourrais hésiter, je pourrais bégayer, je vous en demande pardon. Alors, je commence par cette question. Comment soigner les malades de la meilleure façon? Ce n'est pas évident. Imaginons deux malades, deux personnes différentes qui ont la même maladie. Elles vont tous les deux vont chez le docteur. Il y a un des deux docteurs qui décide de prescrire le médicament A, l'autre le médicament B, savons-nous si ces médicaments sont les plus appropriés pour traiter ces deux malades? Eh bien non, nous ne le savons pas. Nous n'avons pas l'information pour savoir. Nous savons que ces deux médicaments ont été l'objet d'essais cliniques et il y a eu une autorisation officielle qui détermine que ces médicaments peuvent être utilisés pour traiter cette maladie. Mais nous sommes tous si différents. Nous avons des niveaux de maladies qui sont différents. Nous avons des fois plusieurs maladies qui peuvent interagir entre elles, des médicaments qui peuvent interagir entre eux. Et maintenant, on va compliquer cette situation. Eh bien, on va dire que ce monsieur, il est obèse, il est cardiaque, il a une tension artérielle élevée, il a une pancréatite. Et en ce moment, pour soigner toutes ces maladies différentes, on soigne ce malade pour chacune des maladies. On ne regarde pas au malade dans son ensemble pour voir quel est le meilleur régime de traitement pour ce malade qui a 5 maladies différentes. Alors, cette situation, en termes techniques, ça s'appelle des comorbidités. Alors, des comorbidités, ça veut dire aussi qu'on a une polymédication. On a plusieurs médicaments qui sont administrés en même temps. Et très souvent, tous ces médicaments, eh bien, ils empoisonnent le malade. Et donc, la question que je vous pose, et c'est la question qui me passionne, c'est de savoir s'il est possible d'utiliser l'énorme quantité de données cliniques qui, en ce moment, sont gardées dans des milliers d'ordinateurs différents, avec des structures de bases de données différentes, qui ne sont pas interopérables, qui ne communiquent pas entre eux. Est-il possible de profiter de toute cette information et utilisant des techniques d'intelligence artificielle, mais surtout de ce que le professeur Oliveira mentionnait, c'est l'analyse de données à un niveau très très sophistiqué, ce que l'on appelle aujourd'hui Big Data. Big Data, c'est une technique d'informatique qui me permet d'établir des relations entre des causes et des effets où je ne sais pas par où commencer pour identifier les causes et le système tout seul arrive à identifier les causes et les effets. Les causes, bien entendu, les médicaments, les effets, et c'est l'impact, le résultat de ces médicaments sur notre état de santé et l'évolution de notre état de santé. Et la solution, c'est de créer, et c'est de ça que je vais parler, une grande base de données nationale, au niveau national, et plus tard au niveau continental, et plus tard au niveau mondial, où nous aurons les données de santé clinique de la population du monde pour pouvoir découvrir quelle est la meilleure façon de soigner les malades. Et c'est tout à fait passionnant. C'est une opportunité énorme, comme le disait le professeur António Damasio hier. Il y a des risques. Il faut connaître les risques, mais il faut connaître aussi les opportunités. Alors, comment ça marche? Je vais vous expliquer comment tout ça marche. Quels sont les types de données que nous voulons rassembler dans cette base de données nationale? Tout d'abord, le diagnostic des médecins, leurs observations, leurs rapports. Ensuite, les analyses cliniques. Les analyses cliniques du sang, les biopsies, les radiographies, tout ça, ça donne l'information de l'évolution de l'état de santé. Et donc, ça mesure l'effet des médicaments. Ensuite, les médicaments en soi. Au Portugal, 98% des ordonnances sont électroniques. Donc, on peut aller les chercher et on peut aller les traiter. Finalement, les informations qui nous viennent de l'hôpital, combien de jours le malade a été hospitalisé, toutes les données en ce qui concerne l'évolution de son état de santé. Et finalement, les caractéristiques du malade, parce que toutes ces caractéristiques ont une influence directe sur la façon où nous absorbons les médicaments et l'effet des médicaments change radicalement de personne à personne. Et nous n'avons pas beaucoup de connaissances dans ce domaine. Il est très important, si nous arrivons à croiser toutes ces informations et de les réunir dans une base de données centrale, nous arriverons à produire des nouvelles connaissances scientifiques qui nous permettront de soigner le malade d'une façon presque optimale. Continuons. Alors, je vais vous donner un exemple. Comment, en réalité, on peut faire ce système marcher. Alors, j'ai pris un exemple de diabétique. Chacun des 16 points dans ce graphe représente un diabétique, la réponse d'un diabétique. Ils sont soignés, ces 16 diabétiques, avec 3 médicaments. Et seulement, je ne connais pas quels sont ces médicaments. Et nous sommes en train de mesurer le contrôle des niveaux de sucre dans le sang, ce qui est très très important pour le diabétique. Il prend des médicaments pour contrôler son niveau de sucre dans le sang. Et nous observons aussi les caractéristiques personnelles. Alors on va regarder l'âge. Alors à gauche, nous avons les malades plus jeunes, à droite, les malades plus âgés. Et je vois ces 16 points et ça nous dit absolument rien. Parce que je n'ai pas fait l'identification des 3 médicaments. Mais si je fais cette identification, tout à coup, je vois que le médicament vert soigne mieux les malades plus âgés, le jaune, les malades les plus jeunes, et le bleu, il ne marche pas très bien. Alors imagine, ça c'est uniquement pour une seule variable, l'âge. Alors imaginez que vous commencez à additionner des variables à votre étude statistique. Les caractéristiques génétiques, l'indice d'obésité, les styles de vie, s'il est fumeur ou pas, quelles sont les autres maladies qui sont présentes, quels sont les autres médicaments qu'il prend. Et avec des techniques big data, tout à coup, vous pouvez établir un panorama très précis, très riche en données, qui va permettre de traiter ces diabétiques et de toutes les autres maladies avec un niveau de précision qui est extraordinaire. Alors, quels sont les avantages, rapidement, qui peuvent issuer de ces nouvelles connaissances? Tout d'abord, nous allons pouvoir évaluer l'efficacité des médicaments alors qu'ils sont déjà sur le marché. Nous allons pouvoir identifier les effets secondaires qui n'ont pas encore été identifiés et surtout les interactions entre les divers médicaments. Nous allons pouvoir donner aux médecins le pouvoir de faire une ordonnance intelligente, c'est-à-dire de traiter ce malade qui a 5 maladies, de le traiter, de prescrire les médicaments qui sont statistiquement les plus appropriés. En termes de santé publique, on va pouvoir faire des études d'épidémie beaucoup plus précises. Nous allons pouvoir développer un nouveau modèle de recherche clinique et finalement de savoir en termes de coûts pour la société quels sont les médicaments les plus efficaces au meilleur prix. Alors c'est un ensemble d'avantages qui est tout à fait extraordinaire. Alors, mais si je vais réunir les données de tous les citoyens, il faut le protéger. Parce que ces données sont extrêmement sensibles. Alors, comment protéger le citoyen? Alors, tout d'abord, nous avons le règlement européen sur la protection de données dont tout le monde parle, parce que le 25 mai, il y a 4 jours, il est entré en pleine vigueur. Et ce règlement, il est révolutionnaire. Il donne un niveau de protection aux citoyens qui est fantastique. Il place le citoyen au centre du contrôle de ses données personnelles. À travers le consentement, vos données personnelles seront traitées si vous donnez votre permission. Vous aurez le droit de transférer vos données d'un hôpital à l'autre. Et finalement, tout ceci se passe dans des conditions de sécurité qui sont très très poussées. Ce règlement donne aux citoyens le contrôle de ces données personnelles. Et une des méthodes de sécurité qui est extrêmement intéressante, c'est l'anonymisation irréversible du côté des chercheurs, mais pas du côté du malade. Et ça, c'est possible. faire une anonymisation. Donc, il est impossible de savoir le nom du citoyen, le nom du malade, mais d'avoir toutes ces données cliniques pour trouver, pour découvrir toutes ces connaissances scientifiques. Alors, le citoyen, bien sûr, maintient à tout moment le droit de retirer son consentement et ces données seront retirées des bases de données de recherche nationales. Alors, je vous donne, pour terminer, un modèle qui est très simple. Tout ceci commence avec le citoyen, avec son ordinateur, avec son portable, avec un tablet, et c'est là qu'il introduira ces données personnelles qu'il identifie, qu'il introduira son consentement, et finalement, sa demande de transfert de données vers une base de données de recherche. Cette demande est envoyée à tous les fournisseurs de soins de sa géographie, à tous les hôpitaux, à tous les médecins, à tous les laboratoires d'analyse clinique. Ces entités reçoivent cette demande, valident cette demande, recherchent dans leur système toutes les données, les analyses, les diagnostics, les médicaments qui sont associés à cette personne. Et ensuite, ces fournisseurs de santé vont faire une chose très intéressante. Ils vont anonymiser l'information qui est envoyée dans cette base de données pour la recherche et qui est envoyée périodiquement. Et finalement, nous travaillons ces données pour obtenir cette nouvelle connaissance scientifique qui nous va permettre de traiter les malades d'une façon beaucoup plus précise et nous l'envoyons en direction du médecin qui a le malade devant lui et qui reçoit cette nouvelle connaissance scientifique pour Peter Villax, malade, qui est devant le médecin. Et finalement, le médecin reçoit l'information et soigne le malade de la meilleure façon. C'est une opportunité extraordinaire. Il y a beaucoup de risques, il faut les connaître, mais je suis sûr que nous allons y arriver. Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup. Onde é que está o screen, o fundo de ecrã? Merci beaucoup. E nous avons notre dernier, o nosso último orador de hoje, desta sessão, Y-Lan Boureau, é investigadora no FAIR, que é o Facebook Artificial Intelligence Research. Portanto, tenho certeza que tem muitas perguntas para ela. É doutorada na Universidade de Nova Iorque e École Normale Supérieure, investigando sobre visão computacional e machine learning. Tem um pós-doutoramento em Psicologia Experimental e Neurociências pela Universidade de Nova Iorque, durante o qual investigou autocontrole e tomada de decisão. Uma combinação fascinante. O seu trabalho no FAIR tem como prioridade o estabelecimento de diálogo e conversações mais positivas. Bem-vinda.
Hi everyone. I was told to speak in English, so I'll speak in English. So I do research in artificial intelligence, and for lots of people, what we'll realize is they have a very fuzzy intuitions of what's hard and what's easy, and what they should actually, what it means to artificial intelligence. So for example, usually what is hard for people, they think that it should be hard, and what's easy for them, like speaking, they think it should be easy. And then when they interact with a system that does conversation and the system is really bad at it because conversation is actually really hard, they think that's a bad system. Now, if you see, let's say, face recognition system that's capable of identifying a face in a million just from a few images, then people are very impressed because they would not be capable of doing it. So this is kind of one of the problems that we deal with when we do research in AI, is that people go by their gut feelings and the intuition of what is hard and what is easy based on their own experience, and that's actually quite different from what we deal with. And more generally, on the subject of fears, because that's kind of the theme of this conference, if we think about how we react to things around us, our intuitions are really not a very good guide, because we're usually afraid of what's something that's very striking rather than something that's very usual. And I think I couldn't be here yesterday, but I think there was one session on terrorism, for example, and terrorism really plays on this because they try to mount operations that are very striking and very vivid. But if you look at the number of people who actually die from them, it's minuscule compared to, let's say, heart attacks or heart disease or preventable death in hospitals because of doctors who are being overworked and don't sleep enough and they make a clinical error. So if you look at the actual numbers, you realize that we are afraid of things that are actually probably not going to kill us, and the things that are actually going to kill us, often we let them creep on us and we don't do anything. And if you think about the amount of effort that is deployed after a terrorist attack, and if we put all that amount of effort and put that into exercising more or eating better, that would probably have a much bigger effect, but that's not what we're afraid of because it's too usual, and nobody's going to have a newspaper headline about somebody having clogged arteries because it's so usual. But if you think about it in terms of numbers and not narratives, that's actually what we should be more focusing our attention on, is the usual things, the things of every day, because it's so usual that we don't pay attention to it, but that's actually what has the biggest effect. So my first point is really this one, is that what our intuitions of what we should be afraid of are guided more by what's more vivid, what's more striking, and what's more unusual, as opposed to what's kind of the quantitatively what we should really be focusing on. And the second point is, in a way, the mirror effect of that, the mirror image of that in terms of what we should have our hopes toward. We are often more inclined to look at discoveries that are striking and spectacular and would make a good story or a good narrative, as opposed to what would look like incremental effort that are hard to picture. But if you look at the actual research in artificial intelligence that we do day to day, a lot of the exciting papers, the things that we researchers are very excited about, it would look completely boring to people because it's just, let's say, oh, I managed to get 30% instead of 27% accuracy on such and such task. It looks like nothing, but the reason this is so important is that a lot of the ways artificial intelligence is in our life already, it's in complex systems that we don't understand. And so how this little increase in accuracy can percolate and have an effect on our lives is something that we don't understand, so we ignore it. But it's actually the reality we already live in. And so given that we think we can understand what's important to us and what we should be afraid of, and that's often an illusion, in the same way that we don't really always know what we should be afraid of, we don't know what we should be hopeful for. And so if you think about it, a lot of the progress that we see often, so for example, I work for Facebook, and every week we have this like big gathering where all the employees can come together, and we have the fix of the week, the person who fixed a bug, big bug. And often it's a tiny little difference, that little error that somebody caught, and we see the huge effect it has. And often it's like nobody would know that just a tiny cog in the big machine would have an effect, because we don't know where all the cogs, where they fit, and how a big system reacts to a small change. So that's kind of daunting to not realize that, not realize how all the pieces fit together, but that's also a source of hope, because it means you never know how much a small increase in accuracy can affect the end result. And so often, right now, all the developments that we're seeing in all the labs all across the world, they're going to have an effect jointly that we cannot predict right now, so it might be scary that we cannot predict how good it's going to be, but that's also how we all work together to develop this all together, by making all these small improvements that together are going to create something new that we can't predict. And something that I want to mention too is that a lot of the more exciting development of that technique called deep learning, which is a way of combining lots and lots of parameters in a big system to learn things in a way that's quite opaque, not unlike the brain, because we act as if we know how the brain works and how we think, but we really have no idea how we think. I mean, very fuzzy. So a lot of the exciting development of deep learning is how it has been accelerating research in physics and chemistry. And these are things that are hard to understand for people in general, because we already don't know how, if you ask somebody on the street how new molecules are being developed, they won't know. If we ask somebody on the street how we decide how to fold a protein, they don't know. So if I announce you, great, thanks to deep learning, we have managed to fold proteins better, this won't really be meaningful, even though it's really, really significant in terms of innovation. So my point on all this is that we are ancient machines, right? We developed a very long time ago. Evolution, I don't know if we're still evolving or not, but I would argue that a lot of how our emotions are shaped was in response to an environment that has changed a lot. And we tend to respond to narratives and striking stories rather than quantitative complex systems. But the reality that we already live in is made of complex quantitative systems, so that our intuitions are not so well geared. And so I would say in general it's very good to look at what the environment is and what the context is from a more quantitative and statistical point of view, and trying to be more rational about this, which is hard because our gut is screaming that we should be afraid of this and that, and we should be hopeful for this and that. But it's really important to keep in mind that we need to trust the empirical evidence that already exists, and that shows that in general, lots of things that we are afraid of are not what is going to hurt us in the end. And perhaps what's going to hurt us the most is what we're absolutely not noticing. So one last thing I want to say also with respect to, I would say, some of the greatest advances of artificial intelligence recently has been for optimizing little things like how to make better use of energy and how to be more efficient in how we manage little systems, or how we manage, for example, data centers for the big computers, and how we manage all this data. So what we see is that often tasks that could already be done can be done in a way that's much more efficient, and that adding all these improvements results in a very significant improvement overall. And so I also believe, as Peter said, that the next big, one of the most hopeful effects of AI will be that when we finally manage to get all doctors across the world to share the data that they have on people, so that we can finally run those algorithms on all that data, then we're going to see a big improvement in personalized medicine and personalized everything, basically. That's going to make us healthier and stronger. And in a way, what I hope is that once people see that the promise of artificial intelligence can really deliver, they will be a bit less afraid of these like mysterious systems.
Hello. So thank you very much for the three speakers. I think they have talked about very fascinating subjects that will raise a lot of questions. And I was wondering if you have anything that you want to ask. I would open the floor to the speakers. Yes? One question here. One there. We start with you, and then you. And we can maybe take 3 questions, and then we'll... Okay. And first question here, and then second question there.
Thanks. Yes, fascinating. I was amazed how linked this was to the previous artificial intelligence session. In a way, the economic dimension appeared far more today than it did yesterday, because the processing of data through statistical techniques is really one dimension of machine learning, which I was unable perhaps to explain correctly. But I have a question for Peter and one for you. I saw, can't be certain, but I saw at the Royal Academy of Science somebody, you know, Google type, that was showing very clearly how you can always reverse anonymity. So, I mean, there are always ways, and some of them appear to be extremely simple. So that point that you are sure that your anonymity cannot be compromised, I think, for the moment at least, seems to be wishful thinking. And the second point has to do with the power of the data. On that, we fully agree. The databases that will emerge are central for all of this. And yet, depending on the regulation, you can have either too much power for the incumbents, the ones who are already there, and they keep the data and they do not share it, and that, of course, is bad for humanity. On the other hand, if you make it too competitive, then there won't be as much progress. Now, these are economics points, okay? They are I/O points, and I'm sorry if I'm talking pro domo, as they say, but those are my two questions. Thank you.
Okay, very good. It's an extremely important point, the one that Professor Braga de Macedo just made, about the irreversibility of anonymity. First of all, let's say there are basically two situations. If you have a situation where you have just two patients nationwide with the same disease, just this example, it becomes very easy to re-identify them, okay? So there are certain statistical situations, mainly due to the fact that you have very small statistical samples, when it becomes very easy to re-identify them. So let's exclude them. Let's exclude this situation, because when you have small samples, indeed, or very rare diseases, it becomes very easy to re-identify the person. But I would turn my answer into a question to Professor Braga de Macedo. What would you say to an organization that is able to develop a system of irreversible anonymity that is foolproof?
Good question. Good. Next one.
Actually, I have to agree. The idea of irreversible anonymity does not make sense in itself. You can always reverse anonymity. It may be harder, it may be less difficult, you may be left with some unknown, but even if you have 100,000 people on a country with a given situation, just with 3 or 4 things like the zip code and a couple of bases on your DNA, it's always possible. So the question is not that. The question is, how are you willing to preserve anonymity, but on the process losing the ability to develop some good results, some important result that will help you or your family? So does anonymity, is that important a value that you are willing to sacrifice virtually anything, even if your life, to preserve your anonymity? Because in the end, unless you really are restricted to very rough measures that cannot be reverse engineered, once you start getting into DNA data or personal data or medical history data, it's always possible to reverse anonymity with more or less effort. So it's really a trade-off. I mean, anonymity or privacy is not the final value in itself. I mean, life is more important than privacy in the end, right? Doesn't matter if you have your private life if you are dead, right? It's not very good. So it's always a trade-off. In engineering, there's always a trade-off. But really, do not trust that much on the ability of preserving anonymity, while at the same time preserving all the important statistics and higher level statistics that are fundamental to be able to perform a good data analysis of the result. Because anonymity goes against it. Statistics has many levels, right? You can preserve first-order statistics, second-order, higher-order statistics. And as you start preserving higher and higher-order statistics, correlations that are important, it also becomes easier to reverse anonymity. So it's a trade-off.
He's talking like an economist. I like that.
You realize how big the challenge is when I have the president of Instituto Técnico, and an academician and former minister of finance, saying it's probably wishful thinking. The challenge is absolutely passionnant.
Thank you. Ilan, do you have some thoughts about this? No. No.
The incumbent doesn't want to talk. I'm not surprised.
All right. The second question was?
Yes. So I had a question also. You were talking about AI becoming eventually our slaves or working for us. Can help to see that we can also evolve into being the slaves of AI, at least really dependent on them, on this idea, because first they are taking jobs, like we can see already trucks, self-driving trucks and cars tasted by Uber and Tesla, and it's extended to different sectors already. And also we can see that they are using our data in services that we are using, like Facebook or Google, and a lot of different services as well, which in return are influencing us to create ideas in our minds, which means that we are dependent and influenced by the same service that we use. So, and also regarding the jobs, so we won't have the same ability to choose the jobs we will have to pursue and to be applying in our life, because the future will be linked to the AI, and we will have to work to have a work depending on AI as well. So isn't it a world that is evolving towards slavery of AI, and slavery to those who own the AI, which means the GAFAM and the BAT in Asia?
Okay.
Your question is predicated on a paradigm of dominance.
Yes.
I see artificial intelligence predicated on a symbiotic paradigm. We will produce these systems will help you, will help us, we will develop even better systems. Underlying your question is an ideological premise, which is extremely important and has to do with not the distribution of wealth and income, but with the distribution of power. And your question is extremely relevant. Already in an economy based on, in the 20th century, our economy was based on industrial capitalism. Industrial capitalism was able to offer a job to everybody. Okay, we had very low levels of unemployment, particularly in the second half of the 20th century. In the 21st century, our economy is based on knowledge, and the distribution of knowledge becomes very, very significant, because in the 20th century, anybody could work in a car assembly line, anybody could manufacture tires. It was simple. Nowadays, tasks have become much more difficult. And you're right, there's a significant part of the population that probably will not be able to have extremely interesting and challenging jobs. And that is a huge challenge for us as decision makers, as politicians, and as people that need to worry about the important questions, the important issues your question raises.
Something that's important to notice also is that contrary to many other revolutions before that were really predicated on capital, for AI, a lot of what's being produced is knowledge about how to train algorithms and actual models. And a huge part of the community is very committed to keeping that very open and open sourcing all they're producing. And so a lot of the research effort is being done very openly, so everything's published, and the data sets that are created are open. And the research itself is a collaborative effort between lots of labs that are talking to each other and from competing organizations, but still collaborating. So it's not some kind of like secret AI being invented in some basement. It's really the community is very open, and so in my lab, for example, we open source what we do. Our software is online for everybody to use. The models that we create are online also. People can use them too. And it's not just our lab. A lot of the communities is like this because it was created by people who are very aware of the importance of making sure everybody can have access to those technologies we're creating. So that's important to us.
Basically, I agree with the previous answers, and in fact, you mixed a number of issues there, so it's sort of hard to answer them all. But I think this thing of power versus synergy, I think, is an important one. If we do things right, this will be synergetic. But I'll address one question that was not addressed, is the question of dependency. I mean, we could conceptually be slaves of machines, but that doesn't make any sense. I mean, the matrix idea doesn't make any sense. Why would machines want to have slaves like us? We are not good for anything, right? So, I mean, that's not really an issue. The issue is that we may become dependent on machines, that indeed. But we are already extremely dependent on technology. If the power grid went down, we'll all starve to death in a couple of weeks. So, I mean, we'll have no way to bring things here. If the transportation grid went down, it will be chaos, right? So we are already extremely dependent on technology. Even just the internet going down will be already a major issue. Probably the economy will collapse in a matter of weeks. So we are already, you don't need to be dependent on AI because you are already, humanity as a whole is already totally dependent on technology, as has been for the last 12,000 years, right? When we invented agriculture, that was the beginning of the end. At the time, we were totally dependent on technology. From then on the dependence on agriculture. And so I don't think it's a new issue. I think we have to take care that things are well designed. We need good engineers. So hint, hint. But we need good engineers. But other than that, the dependency does not. Our dependency on technology does not depend on AI. We may even never develop AI or strong AI or anything like that, and still be very dependent. So I think it's mostly a false fear.
Estava-me aqui a pedir para falar em português, um bocadinho, e em francês. Mas aproveitava para perguntar ao professor Arlindo, porque este tema que toca o futuro do trabalho, toca, como presidente do Instituto Superior Técnico, o que é o futuro da educação. O que é que nós vamos treinar as pessoas para fazer, para treiná-los para empregos que ainda não existem. Como é que isto vai ser?
Yeah, well, I mean, there is the short and medium term, and there is the long term, right? The long term, we don't know. So basically, like 50 years from now or 80 years from now, I don't know what the job market will be. I don't know what education will be. I really don't think anyone knows. But as a famous economist said, in the long run, we are all dead anyway. So now, in the short and medium term, this is important. We have to educate people to be very, very flexible. Learning facts is much less useful now than it used to be. Learning how to think is much more useful now than it used to be, even though it was always useful. So our bet is on teaching people on how to think, on how to learn, on learning how to learn, on being able to learn throughout their life, and not just while they are young, while they are 20 years or so. So that's our bet. We are doing many things right. A few things need to be changed. We probably need also to change the way we teach so that students become more involved, more interested. The students now don't have the same patience as we did to sit in boring classrooms while people talked about the same method that was used 500 years ago. So we have to change that. But mostly we have to teach people how to learn throughout their life, and we have to teach people how to think. And I think that's Técnico does a good job, but many universities in Portugal, probably most of them, actually do a good job. We have a very good system. I think we are well prepared for this revolution of knowledge where education is fundamental.
Do you want to say something? I just want to add something that revolutionized the way I worked. First it was called Alta Vista, and then it became Google. Search engines. I do not do anything without getting the data first. So then my conclusions are solid and they are evidence-based. And that's the biggest change in the way that I work, is getting the data first.
We have a question. Filipe, se puderes fazer a tua
pergunta. Bom dia a todos. Eu tenho uma curta pergunta. Pode ser em português? Pronto. Ah, ok, donc je vais poser la question en français, puisque on me le demande. C'est une question pour professeur Arlindo. Votre intervention m'a fait penser à un livre par Penrose, écrit pendant les années 80, The Emperor's New Mind. Je ne sais pas comment on traduit ce titre en français, mais enfin, sachez que c'est écrit par un très fameux mathématicien, physiciste, donc quelqu'un de très respectable. Et à l'époque, justement, il défendait l'idée que la conscience humaine, le cerveau, est quelque chose de non algorithmique. On ne peut pas avoir une machine de Turing qui va modeler exactement le fonctionnement du cerveau parce qu'il y a quelque chose d'intrinsèquement biologique dans la conscience. Et bon, c'est lié aussi au collapse, c'est un peu lié à la physique quantique et au collapse de wave function. Je ne rentre pas dans les détails, mais en tout cas, c'est totalement contraire à ce que vous avez défendu. Je sais que ce livre a été écrit il y a 30 ans, donc beaucoup de choses se sont passées en 30 ans. Ma question serait dans le sens de savoir si cette pensée est totalement dépassée aujourd'hui avec ce qui s'est produit depuis 1989, je pense que c'est un livre de 1989, ou si au contraire il y a encore des personnes respectables, évidemment, qui soutiennent ce genre de propos. Merci.
Je pourrais essayer de parler en français, mais je pense que ça ira pas. So I'm going to switch into English. So the ideas of Roger Penrose that are in that rather interesting book, by the way, that part is the only part that I don't like in that book. I think they are as actual today as they were 30 years ago or whatever, and they are as they have as little credibility today as they had 30 years ago. There is no evidence at all, in particular, that the mechanisms that Penrose proposed are underlie a consciousness. In particular, whatever strange mechanism on microtubules in the neurons. Even at the time, it was already a not very good idea, and today it looks even worse. Having said this, although the majority of people believe, like I do, and this is an issue I address with some care in my book, believe that the brain is essentially Turing compatible, and basically the brain, a Turing machine will be able to perform pretty much like the brain. There are some people, not an entirely vanishing group, that believe that there is something intrinsical to biological systems that underlie consciousness. Some people even believe that even if you program a computer to behave just like a human, it may behave just like a human but still not be conscious because it's not using the right computational support. This is an idea that I do not believe in, and in my book I address it very carefully, basically to say that it's wrong, but it will be unfair to say that nobody believes in this. There are people that believe in this. One of the most well-known is Christopher Koch, who is the head of the Allen Institute for Brain Science, and they believe there is something very special about the way the brain is organized. What we know is that the brain developed over a period of a bit more than 500 million years. Consciousness very likely has evolutionary value, so there is a good reason for systems to be conscious. It helps us survive, and it has external effects. If it has external effects, then it can be tested. So it's not the mysterious thing that some people believe. And therefore, it should be possible to reproduce it in a computer. Having said this, it will most likely be very, very difficult to reproduce in a computer, at least in the next decades, because in fact the particular architecture of the brain creates consciousness in a way that we still have no idea how.
Thank you.
We have time to just one final question. Yes. En français, pardon.
Enfin, c'est aussi...
En français, en français.
So, why do we want the computers to think like humans if we say that the human capacity is not the bigger one, and that we want to improve the capacity and... Yeah, exactly.
Well, I can give it a shot. I mean, first of all, humans are still much better than computers at most things, right? Not at some things, like math, we are not better than computers, but at most things we are much better. So the objective of the AI community is to get computers to the point where they are as good as humans, right, as flexible. A human can learn to do pretty much anything a computer cannot. So that is a reasonable objective. Your question still has a reason to know, because maybe computers should be different, right? Maybe they should be better than us, less whatever, less emotional or less subject to whatever bad things exist in humanity. That is a good question, but still it's such a difficult objective to have computers achieve human level like intelligence. That is a good objective in itself. Now, once you have done this, people may try to make computers more intelligent than humans. That is quite reasonable, and that is one of the issues. But we are still a long way from having computers as flexible as the humans, and therefore it will probably be a very good objective to be pursued in the next decades or so. This I finish. Sentiments, emotions are just another form of intelligence. So emotions, and if you read the Mars, you know this, emotions are an integral part of the way we behave. So emotions is what makes you run away from lions and approach interesting mates and avoid the cold and so on. So emotions, they look different, but they are just an integral part of intelligence. And if you have a system that has to survive some way, it might also have emotions. If you look at the robots that Técnico put in the IPO with the kids, of course they are simulated emotions at this point, but still you cannot tell whether they are simulated emotions or not, because you cannot really tell if someone has a real emotion, it's a simulated emotion. So emotions are not different from the rest. And if you need systems to interact with people, they will have emotions. They will in the end, whether they are simulated or not does not make such a big difference, because they will have the behavior that corresponds to having emotion.
Just to clarify, we sometimes mix up emotions, sentimentos, afetos, with a sense of self. A sense of self is what is most human about us. The others are just forms of intelligence. One final comment. For those of you who do not know Alan Turing, look him up. Study him. Watch the movie. Alan Turing, most of Alan Turing's work was done under the protection of military intelligence and secrecy laws. And his work did not become known until very, very late. And then, unfortunately, he died very, very young. But one day he'll be recognized as important as Einstein in the 20th century.
I want to answer one more thing about emotions and sentiments. Indeed, that already you have lots of models of why animals and humans have emotions, and indeed there are a form of like fast cognition. So, for example, if you've known many times that the right action to take when there's a snake is to run away, then it's very rational to hard code that so that your next generation doesn't have to learn it, already knows it, and in many cases, emotions are just a fast, like model-free cognition where you know what the right action is, but you don't necessarily know why or what the causality is. But it doesn't make your conclusion invalid. So even when we are trying to design algorithms, they can have something that looks like emotion, which is just having an outcome where you know that the right action to take. You don't know why, but it's the right one. And so that in that way, they would have emotions and sentiments, because that's operationally that's more efficient than having to always build a case forward. But I think you mean emotion and sentiment more like a poetic way or something. In that case, I mean, we evolved as without a designer, right? But when we're doing systems that we're designing themselves, it's a very different environment to create them, because we are designing the systems ourselves. So we decide what their value function is. We decide what their values are. We decide what they're trying to optimize, unless we reach to the strong AI. But we're so far from that. I'm not even going to talk about that. So I would say it's way too early to think about like sentiment and emotion for these machines because they're so far.
Okay. So, just one more. No, we have to wrap it up. So, thank you very much for your participation. Thank you for the speakers to such a wonderful talk.